Welcome back to the Old Colony Cast, a podcast about all things Plymouth and surrounding areas. I am Andy, your host, and I am joined today by Fish.
Hello.
Who's apparently trying to make his job easier, so we'll have to work on that. Mm-hmm. And Hanna.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
You know.
I know. First timer.
Yeah. And Hanna, you kind of spearheaded this whole one, so who are we talking to today?
We're talking to a Plymouth author, historian. Thank you. I remembered what it was. Diane Finn.
Yeah.
And she's here with us. She's so helpfully let me her name. I swear I didn't need it, though. I wanted to build up. Yeah. And she's got a lot of cool stuff kind of in line with the things I've already talked about, but I think she'd be able to elaborate and give us a little bit more.
So it's kind of very...
of a story.
It's kind of a story how it happened. You know?
Yeah.
We had you on the show, and you told us a big lie about Barrow Hill. And Mother Crewe?
I call her Mother Crewe for short. It's Mother Crewe.
Mother Crewe.
Yeah.
Was a big part of that.
Yes.
And I'll let you tell the rest of the story, because it's your story.
Well, I mean, I go back and listen to the episode, but the whole tie-in is that Diane has written a book about Mother Crewe, and that's what caught my... So what drew us together?
That's what I was looking for, not the story that you told.
Okay, I was like, you want me to retell that whole
No, I wanted you to tell the story about how today happened.
Okay, so I mentioned in the Bug Light episode, I think, at the end, I was like, there's someone with a store called Mother Crewe's Naturals. I thought it was in Duxbury because I saw the sign in Duxbury. It's not in Duxbury. It's right by Memorial Hall on 11 Park Ave.
Really?
Kind of if you go to like Dillon's Local and that parking lot in Dillon's Local, there's a gray building next to Memorial Hall that has suites in it.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Where Maya Royal's fashion studio is, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I know where you're talking about.
So it just moved locations, or it's in the middle of moving locations. And I reached out to them because I was, I just wanted to go. I was like, what's this store about? It sounds interesting. So I couldn't find the store because they were moving locations. And I come to find out it's from Alyssa, who I now know pretty well. She owns and operates it. And she told me that she, all about what they do there and when they'd be open and what kind of things they'd be doing there, which sounds really cool. Candle making, soap making, all that kind of fun stuff. Cool. And I said, this is a really weird question, but is the Mother Crewe from the story, from the Plymouth legend, the story from Jane B. Austen? She said, yes, it is. And then we ended up meeting up, and 2 days after I spoke with her about that online, Diane also reached out to her, because Mother Crewe doesn't spark too many people's I feel interest, but it just so happened to catch me and Diane's eye because it's not really a super well-known story in Plymouth.
No. Yeah.
Right, that's correct. Yes.
At all. I was like, there's no way this is named after that. But it turns out it was. And Diane has, she looks to be an authority on it.
Yeah,
from what I can tell from the size of the book.
About that.
Okay, that's what I say about everything. I'm like, I don't really know anything about this as I talk about it for an hour.
So, Diane, what was it about Mother Crewe that sparked your interest to the point where you're like, I'm going to write a whole book?
Well, first of all, doing tours, I was a teacher. I loved history. And so I started doing colonial lantern tours, which were historic walking tours by candlelight at night. And my husband had a master's in business, so he was the one that was able to market this such that we've done thousands of people, school groups, all sorts of people in tours of Plymouth. And I was always looking to expand the information, particularly Burial Hill. And there's Dr. LeBaron, and then there's Is
that the doctor that may or may not have been stealing bodies?
No, Dr. LeBaron was in the Mother Crewe story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember it. There was some overlap.
It's in his daughters, in one of his,
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry.
So I was curious to learn more about Dr. LeBaron so I could say something intelligent when I was up on Burial Hill.
Yeah.
Dr. LeBaron, Lazarus LeBaron. And what happened is I started reading the book, and it written by Jane Goodwin Austen.
Yeah.
And she writes in the preface of the book, what I'm about to tell you is true, and truth is stranger than fiction. So now she's got my curiosity. But to my way of thinking, it was a hard read to read Dr. LeBaron and his daughters because of the old language, the way it's written. And much to my surprise, she intertwines the story of Mother Crewe along with facts about the LeBarons. Even in one chapter, she's actually killing off one of the characters and then giving a recipe on how to make cheesecake in the same chapter. It makes no sense to me.
Have you made the cheesecake?
I have not made cheesecake. And so we became intrigued with the Mother Crewe part of it, and the fact that some of the characters in there, their graves are actually up on Burial Hill. Thomas Southworth Holland.
Yeah.
Which in her preface, she even says that curse is substantially true. I'm like, oh my God, how could that be? And Hanna Howland and, the General Arnold grave. So to find many of the places, both in Plymouth and on Burial Hill, that connect with the story got me really fascinated. And I had, at one point, as many as 14 guides that did tours with us. And so as we began to talk about it and said how fun that would be to do at Halloween time with characters, costume characters, we actually started for several years doing special tours the month of October on the weekends with characters dressed up as Mother Crewe. Reading more of Jane Goodwin Austen's book, we found another character, Bethia Hazel, and so we had somebody who took that character on. I had gone to a different lecture and found a different character, and that was Aunt Rachel and Aunt Rachel's Curse.
Yeah.
And so I had all these stories mixing about, and it was a couple of the tour guides that actually really delved into the Jane Goodwin Austen book to pull out all the key information so that we could really piece that whole story together. So that we would, particularly around Halloween, that I have to show you in here because I have a picture of the tour guides. The guides get really crazy. I mean, they would dress up like the characters.
Oh, fun!
That's cool.
And one of the ones that did Mother Crewe, she was amazing. They all were. They were really great. And so I would be the one that would tell the story, and they would hide out in the shadows, and come popping out of different places along the trail. And the story was so popular that what we found was we could incorporate a lot of it on our nightly tours, our nightly ghost tours, is pull a lot of the Mother Crewe part of the story out. So when originally I did a smaller version of the book, just the Mother Crewe story, particularly for the tour guides, so that they would understand the story. And we didn't really do a whole lot with it. I sold a few of those when we did our tours and so forth. But I came up with the idea that I really would like to take all those stories, bring them together. And there are two women that were actually tried for witchcraft in Plymouth. Most people don't know about that. And then just interesting, funky things about witches, how they treat witches, different superstitions about witches. So that's where this book came about, Witches Brew, Mother Crewe, Legends and True Tales of Old Plymouth.
I love it.
So,
I wish there was something like happening. I know that there's endless ghost tours. There's so many still, and night tours and historical tours, but I've never been on one where I see people actually, besides there's a gentleman dressed up like a colonist, but
well, two sources. I was talking to Alyssa about trying to recreate Mother Crewe and Witch Hazel, and she got all excited.
I know, and you're talking to the right person.
These guys are my buddies. They when I was a teacher, their children were my students, and so they would come and volunteer in the classroom. And they eventually became tour guides, and they've been like lifelong friends. So they really enjoy this. And then when I was doing the program at the Plymouth Center for the Arts, they seemed interested in the idea of regurgitating costume characters. Not right now, possibly like next season. So we'll have to see what we could do to get
that would be
the Mother Crewe.
That'd be so cool.
I know that graveyard like the back of my. I did that stuff for free when I was a kid.
What, scare tours?
Yeah. All the time.
So is Mother Crewe an actual person, or is
if
this...
you're a historian, and some of them may be listening to this, they would absolutely say, absolutely not. The whole thing is a figment of her imagination, Jane Goodwin Austen's imagination. I say, I believe, and I'll say in my book, I believe she was real.
Yeah.
I mean, why would Jane say what I'm about to tell you is true?
She came from something.
She came from something. So the question is, was her really name Elizabeth Crewe and Mother Crewe, that with the way we've made it up? But there is a Crewe farm in Plimpton, and there is a ring road in Plimpton, which ties in with the main characters of the story. There are graves on Burial Hill that connect with the story. There are antique buildings around Plymouth that connect with different parts of the story. So if you would ask me, I say it's true. And I've been on a search. I mean, I have been, to the court records. I've looked in several different places, but I have yet, it's all evaporated. So the historians are all laughing at me, saying, "Oh, come on, she's just very dramatic." And, and it made for great touring. But I am committed that somehow, this is going to maybe Alyssa. In fact, we just texting Alyssa to say, Alyssa, you and I need to go on a search and see if we can't locate.
So this is the research you're doing is an ongoing thing. Like you haven't stopped even though your book's done.
Well, I have to say, I'm a very eclectic personality, and so, for example, I have a children's book, and I did one on scallop shells and tied in with the scallop shell program that's in town, and I'm working on one called The Naughty Pilgrims, which is all court records of the Pilgrims. So have I really focused on Mother Crewe? No, but have I really taken some time periodically through the years to see something would pique my interest and see is there any way to follow that and see if we can't uncover something, but not yet.
Now, why is it Plymouth history that interests you so much? Is it just because you're from the area, or is...
Well, as an elementary teacher, and I minored in history, so I always loved history. But when I was teaching in the Plymouth schools, I had the opportunity to be a teacher liaison to a grant with Plymouth Plantation, and they developed a curriculum called The World of the Pilgrims. And when they got through with that, when we got through working on this grant, which is a 2-year project, in which I learned information that wasn't even in print. It was just the Plymouth historians would say, well, what about children's life? What about family life? What about their meals? We learned all this information, and then we developed lessons for children. And we worked with the Plymouth schools in utilizing all that information. So a friend of mine who had left education, she and I had worked together, she said, you should do a tour for children like they do in Boston. They do Make Way for Ducklings.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, what a great idea.
Yeah.
And I checked with the plantation, and they actually sponsored me, and the Antiquarian Society sponsored me. So I started doing little pilgrim footsteps, walking tours for little kids, and programs with the historic houses. And just snowballed into a business. And because my husband had a master's degree in marketing, he told me I was just playing. It wasn't really a company, like and so, but we teamed up together, and with his background and my teaching background, it developed. We had the kind of personality that we were so competitive, I wouldn't even play cards with him, So to be able to reach a point where we would then actually develop a business together was quite interesting, and he was amazing. So to think that we did tours for thousands of children and groups and people was pretty cool.
And then you said that people started asking you more of ghost stories and such.
Yes, we were doing history tours, and the question kept coming up, and I attribute that to the fact that they were traveling to places like Williamsburg and Gettysburg and places where that were doing ghost tours, and so they were saying, oh, why not Plymouth? And it was like, after we had the question so many times, my husband said, we got to do one for this Halloween. And so we started asking all our guides to see. To me, a ghost story has to have a lot of history in it.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to just do some woo-woo silly stuff,
Yeah.
So we asked the guides that worked for us if they would do some research and see if we couldn't come up with some stories. We had maybe about a dozen stories that we sort of began to develop, and there were only 3 of us that knew the stories, my husband, myself, one of the guides, and my husband talked to the local paper and said we were going to do it. We were doing it on the steps of what was the Wax Museum.
Oh, yeah,
Our very first tour. To our surprise, throngs of people were showing up. And so from there, it was like, whoa, this is something. So that's sort of how the whole Ghost into Legends tour got started.
Yeah.
It was, I'd say, about 15 plus years ago. Maybe longer.
So how did you determine which stories you wanted to tell on the tour and which ones didn't cut?
Well, for example, you've got the King Philip. Get the King Philip and the fact that he was beheaded, his head was put on a pike.
Yeah.
So, how do you develop that into a possible ghost story?
Right.
You've got the General Arnold, these men that froze to death in our harbor and their mass grave on Burial Hill. So with things like that, to take stories like that and build on them. And then after people began to know about us and hear about us, they would come up and tell us their own version.
Yeah.
It was, is it Anthony's Hair Odyssey, which is on North Street. The girls that worked there said, oh, we know we've got a ghost. This is we've heard the back door slam, the toilets flush.
Yep.
All of a sudden, a whisk comes through, the back door opens suddenly, things like that. So they would start to tell us these stories, and from there, the stories grew and developed over the years.
Yeah, I know it's Uva and the axe throwing place now. It used to be Walgreens? No.
Oh, like way
Back. Yeah, it was something, and that's supposed to be haunted. I know people who work at the New World Tavern have said that they've had some experiences.
Yeah.
Seems to be very common downtown.
Yeah, so as time went on, we built a whole lot of these stories based on things people told us and then elaborate on them or doing more research to go with it. There was one, the Blue Blinds, which is now
Yellow Deli?
Yellow Deli.
Yeah, Yellow Deli. For example, there was a woman that was running her little gift shop there, and she said it used to belong to a woman named Miriam, and Miriam had a black cat, and supposedly...
So that automatically makes her a witch.
And so when we started telling the story, we'd say to the children, look out for the black cat, and of course every now and then a black cat would show up
Oh, yeah, you're
somewhere
right.
in the center of town, and everybody would go like,
Yeah.
But she would say that she believed that Miriam haunted the Blue Blinds, and that the story supposedly was that she was buried in the backyard and requested when she was dying that her cat be buried with her, so that that Miriam and the cat are buried behind what would be the Blue Blinds. And so we'd tell that story, but then we'd say Ann Wilson, who ran the shop here, and she used to be at Village Landing, and then was running a gift shop there. She claimed that people would come in and they would stop, and she would feel this cold chill in the air, and they get the whiff of perfume.
Yeah.
And so so we have all these great stories that would come to us over time that we would add to our tours.
That's cool. So I made a joke about that she had a black cat, so obviously she was a witch. But I mean, at that time, that was kind of like, people who were accused of being witches were
Absolutely.
either mentally ill or just, I don't know, independent.
Yeah. Intelligent.
Intelligent, and is there the whole Mother Crewe thing? Do you think that they made her into a witch because she was, had mental issues? Do you think it was that she was like a, just an independent woman? Like, why do you think that that legend came to her, or even the other witches that were tried in Plymouth?
Well, I'm assuming that you know the story, right? The story about Bathsheba, and was, in the fact that Bathsheba was jilted, and she died, just 3 days after. You hear supposedly her boyfriend and her best friend were taking care of her. So I don't know if
I gotta go back and listen to that
one
episode.
of Dr.
It's been 2 years ago.
Dr. LeBaron's daughters, they got together.
Oh, right.
So the idea is this woman who was an elderly woman who lived in this hovel out in Plimpton, and that she had a daughter named Bathsheba, and Bathsheba was a sickly girl. So supposedly this Dr. LeBaron, was bringing medicine for her, and her boyfriend, unfortunately, was getting tired of having a sickly girlfriend, and that was Ansel Ring, and so he started flirting with Bathsheba's best friend named Molly Peach. And supposedly the medicine that was left, Molly had this idea to put it in Mother Crewe's cider to have her kind of get out of the picture so that they could spend some time. And they decided Bathsheba was so sick she wouldn't know the difference. Anyway, she was delirious with fever. And in the middle of the night, Bathsheba awakens and she's calling out, and she sees her best friend and her boyfriend kissing and hugging, and she screams, and that wakes up the mother. Mother kicks them out. And Bathsheba dies 3 days later, partly from a broken heart, partly from being so ill. And so Mother Crewe, Elizabeth Crewe, is furious. I mean, she feels that they're responsible for her daughter's death. And that's like the start of it. So she's sort of like this woman who's been so angered, and it doesn't take but several weeks after, according to the story, that the couple come to Plymouth to get married. And so she knows, she hears about this, and so she's there to curse them because she's so angry. So is she a witch because? So I see it as that it's her anger that causes her to curse.
Yeah.
And then from there, people then get excited and life happens. And as people pass on for various reasons, Ansel's a sailor. He died. He drowns out at sea. So I think that, and I could be completely wrong, but I would guess that Jane Goodwin Austen picked up pieces of the story and then just was able to weave it together into this incredible story. Some of it may be true in terms of what happened. There was a Crewe farm. There was a ring road. So, did she then just weave the fantasy of the curse and the characters? I don't know. But I'd just like to learn more about her and see if it's any way we can could find her grave.
I know, right? That'd be cool.
So how would you even start to locate her grave? Like, I mean, I would assume she'd be buried around here, but do you have like
Maybe in Plimpton.
Yeah.
In the story, she's buried in Plimpton with
Yeah.
her daughter,
Right.
and in the graveyard next to a church. So where I started was I found in a book that they said there was a Crewe farm. So I actually went to Historic Society and I went to the Plimpton Town Hall to see if we could get maps, if we could get records. Where were these places?
Wasn't
located.
there an issue though? Like, so she cursed Howland because he said that she was on his land.
Right. She had moved to a hut that was on his property, like an
Right.
old shack on his property, but which was on the Plimpton Road, which is like around where West School is. That's what I'm
Right.
thinking. This would be Plimpton Road.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Right.
but she originally was supposedly from Plimpton.
Right.
And so she was only there because she had moved to town so she could keep an eye on the family,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Keep up with
and
those
keep
curses.
Yeah. Curses going. I mean, the story gets pretty brutal.
Yeah.
We would get a little nervous when young children would come on this tour. You know, there's one of the characters that mass murders his whole family.
Holy cow.
Because he was a sailor, and one of the ring girls marries him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's an opium addict, and so he kills everybody off, and then we have Thomas Southworth Howland, who gets upset because he says, "Here's this woman's living on his property." He goes out to assess the property.
Did he get thrown from his horse? Am I remembering
Yes,
that correctly?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, she supposedly
The-
curses him, and
The
his
sky
horse
got
takes
dark
off.
and
Yeah.
crows
And
are
he
flying.
hits his head and falls, and
Yeah.
dies. And so, and then she predicts that she's going to die around the same time. And in part of the story, she talks about the darkness falls over the land. And again, if you go and research, there actually was like the 3 days of darkness right around the time period that the story takes place. That's the thing that was fascinating to me. Is the more I learned about it, the more I started to keep pulling the pieces together. And that one is a case that they believe today that it was a forest fire somewhere out west that brought about all the smoke
Smoke,
and
yeah.
darkness. But people were thinking it was the end of the world.
Right.
3 days of darkness. Oh my gosh! They were going around and returning things they had stolen. This whole thing. So it's fascinating to just make the connections. Pastor Leonard, there is actually a sign on Leiden Street for Pastor Leonard's home,
Yeah.
which ties into the story.
Oh, I've seen that. How does he fit into the...
He supposedly when Ansel Ring and Molly come to Plymouth to get married, they go to Pastor Leonard's house, and he lived across the street from Dr. LeBaron, and so Dr. LeBaron had filled him in on the story.
Yeah.
So he turns the couple away and says he doesn't feel that they're right to get married, that they shouldn't get married, but that doesn't stop them. So they supposedly go to the Justice of the Peace at the top of North Street. So, which would be where New World Tavern is. Around
Okay,
where New World
yeah.
Tavern is. And then again, it adds to the story that says the Howlands come out of their house, that consider Howland, to say no child of mine will ever have anything to do with that couple, because
Yeah.
Mother Crewe's there cursing, and Molly's on her knees saying, "Please, Mother Crewe, please don't curse us," according to how the story goes. Now, that block over there was the Howland block. So again, the whole thing, like, if you know a little of the area, and you start to read the story, you just start to see all the
it's just so
connections.
funny to hear like people refer to like how we refer to streets, like Howland
Yeah.
Street and Leiden Street.
Yes,
It's just
right.
really fascinating.
So the more I dug into the story, the more exciting I thought it got, and how much fun it was to share it with people and get people all kind of excited about it. But then again, you got historians who say,
Yeah.
no, this is not true. I say, yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Do you think it's partly because it's not directly tied to pilgrims that that the community around doesn't really know about it as much?
Well, I don't know. There are historians who definitely know. People who ran Pilgrim Hall Museum, for example, and other museums who are very knowledgeable about the history. But they also knowledgeable about Jane Goodwin Austen, and the feeling is that she was.
So they don't really.
She was being sensational
Yeah.
in terms of trying to get stories.
So they don't tell the story because to them it's just a story.
Right.
I gotcha.
Right.
Well, I don't know. Feels pretty real.
It's just a fun thing.
It is
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah, it's a very cool story,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize that there was more to it.
There's way more to
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I could only take up so much of your time before.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
So what is like one of your favorite aspects of the story that we may have not touched on yet?
Well, let's see. Favorite aspects of the story. Well, one of the things, for example, is that there's a part of the story supposedly that after Ansel died because he was out to sea and he was people knew he was cursed, and sailors are superstitious, and so there's a storm and they want to throw him overboard. He's telling the captain he ought to just get in a lifeboat and go because they're going to throw him overboard, the sailors, because they think
Holy cow.
Mother Crewe is stirring
Yeah.
up the oceans,
Yeah.
and they're all going to sink unless he's gone. And he supposedly begs for the lifeboat and goes and sails away, and rows himself away as they're all on the deck watching. To me, it's very dramatic. You could see this as a whole.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, I'm like, why isn't this a movie or at least
know.
like a
I know.
Netflix
And so
show?
he supposedly is in this boat, and all the sailors are watching him go, and the seas, are really rough. And he goes over by Beach Point, which is the point.
Yeah.
And his boat just gets up in a wave and crashes on his body. It's his lifeless body is battered back and forth, and then. So the sailors go out and bring him to his wife,
Yeah.
and Mother Crewe is there cackling away, and enjoying the fact that she's now
She's got
killed
her
off
revenge,
one of the-
yeah.
So it's one of the stories, and then there's a little boy that supposedly gets run over by a horse and wagon right in town square.
Okay.
And his eventually dies. The story gets all like convoluted in terms of how it all because the little boy is sick and he dies. The mother's now carrying a baby that's Molly, and she goes into early labor and dies. And so to me it's just fascinating, the whole drama of it and the whole way it's put together.
I always love how there's like these really hard times to live, and when people just die. I mean, the guy basically committed suicide in the rowboat, more or less. I mean. But
the fear of
yeah.
the idea of somebody being cursed. Again, that time period, the superstitions.
Yeah.
And then almost like actualizing something because you believe it so strongly.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like he
you turn
kind of
into a
made it
reality.
happen. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And did she walk around and tell everyone that she cursed him, or was it like
supposedly when they married, when they were getting married by the Justice of the Peace?
she showed up at the wedding or
She
something?
showed up and made this huge drama thing
Yeah.
at their wedding.
I always picture the Princess Bride scene.
Oh, boo!
Yeah,
Boo!
yeah.
That thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's supposedly because of the strength of her curse, and because Molly's there crying and begging, that brought people out of their homes. So now the whole
There's more
So the whole
community.
town knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
community knows. Yes,
It's a small town. People talk.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's funny. And you have other books. You have a handful with you.
I do. Well, my first book was the Secrets of Plymouth Rock, and that book came about because as a teacher and a tour guide, I was doing tours for even really little kids, like preschoolers would come, and how do you hold a preschooler's attention on the story of the rock that's been dropped and broken and chiseled and moved, all based on this 95-year-old man who says, it's important.
Yeah.
And little kids are like, oh, look at the boat. Oh, look at the plane.
Yeah.
So,
Look, a seagull.
So my daughter was a freshman in college, and she was getting awards for her art. And I just asked her, could she draw pictures? I was going to do another tour, and I wanted it to be more successful.
Yeah.
So I said, could you do a picture of the rock? Like, make one where the rock is crying, make one where it's falling off the boat. And she did a series of drawings for me.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And she did them like in pastels.
Yep.
And so, for all the different scenes that I was looking for, I put the story together, and I started using her story cards. After we look at the rock, we'd just go sit, there on the grass. Mm-hmm. And teachers eventually came up to me and said, you should make a book out of that. We'd read that to our classes.
Yeah.
And here again, this is where my husband comes in, because I heard that so many times and I've got to write this book. And he said, I'm so sick of hearing you say someday, one day, just do the book. And so my daughter's like, well, I'm doing some graphic work for a T-shirt company. I could do the color separation. And my husband said, well, I can go to the different printers in the area and get prices on what it would take. And that's how our first version of the book came about. And we sold we went through a couple editions of that. It was black and white and blue,
Yeah.
cheap color version. soft color and not hard, not colored. So just with 400th coming up, I said to my daughter, "Come on, don't you think we could get some?" my daughter's now like 52, and she runs the restaurant Brewfish and Mary, and she
Oh,
teaches-
yeah.
if you've ever
Very
been to Brewfish,
cool.
That's my daughter's restaurant, and so she's
Now I think I remember meeting you because we've had that
Yeah,
discussion,
yeah,
and
that
we've
discussion.
done events with
Yeah.
Brewfish.
So
Yeah.
it's Erin and I.
Yeah,
So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So she, reluctantly rolled her eyes, and spent the summer taking the original drawings and colorizing them. And we worked through a company called Mascot. And between my son and my daughter and myself, we chipped in money to do, the hardcover version of it, which was a lot of fun. And so with that, I decided, we need an activity book. I'm a teacher. You gotta have coloring pictures. You gotta have things to do. So I spent, some time working on that. It's kind of fun.
Cool.
And because with all this is going on in this book, I started to join a writers group at the senior center at the Plymouth Center for Active Living.
Yep.
And there was actually a writers group. And I do not consider myself a great writer. I consider myself a teacher, a tour guide. I love sharing the stories, but the actual writing piece, I'm not someone that's into all this descriptive writing. So I loved being part of this writers group. It's where I learned so much in terms of the craft of writing. And one of the every time we'd meet, we'd try to have something to share. And one time, I said, I'm going to share about the scallop shell because I didn't have this book, but I had a little booklet thing that when I'd get on buses, sometimes I would give little scallop shells out to people, and I would explain how it meant safety in travel, and it tied in with pilgrims and people on a pilgrimage. So I shared that with my writers group. They said, I didn't know that. I never heard of that. So I decided I had to do this book on scallop shells. So I started this project, which is the scallop shells in ancient times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, how Aphrodite comes in on a shell, and how the scallop shell is a Christian symbol. And then the scallop shell in the Middle Ages, how people would go on pilgrimages and they would put scallop shells on their hats and their hoods to show that they were Christians and they were on their way to a mission. They were on, and so the whole scallop thing got connected with Christians, and then shell oil,
yeah.
safety and travel.
Oh,
And
okay.
Native Americans.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this part. I decided when I was doing the Native American part that I wanted to use something from like museums, like the way natives actually use shells for ornamentation. And I found this in the Museum of Natural History. And I wrote to them and said, I'm a retired teacher. I'm doing this little book, and I use these illustrate because you have to get permission.
Sure, yeah.
And so we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then finally they sent me a letter and said they were giving me permission, no charge, to Dr. Finn. So I going around town going, excuse me now. Dr. Finn, if you don't mind. I thought that was hysterical. And of course, one of the things.
I was just going to say, you got the ones from the old, and now that's on it's in front of the Forefathers
the
Monument.
original monument over Plymouth Rock had the 4 scallop shells.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And those shells now sit at the base of a Forefathers Monument.
Yeah.
The original shells that were on the top of the original.
So is that how it tied into the Pilgrims, because they were Christian and traveling and such?
Yes, because there was this whole thing about going to Santiago, Spain, and there was There was an apostle of Jesus that supposedly when he died, his body was brought to Santiago, Spain, and this whole church was there. I'm going to have a little brain freeze here on this one.
It's all right.
But the
We get that a lot in the show.
Yes, we did. I know.
but so the idea was that if people went to this place and got to see this, this reverend spot and this cathedral, then they would go a little way and they would actually get a scallop shell because the beach not too far away had scallop shells. So it became a thing that you go on a pilgrimage, you go to see this place in Spain, and you get the scallop shell to show that you've been there.
I find that fascinating because I was one of the artists in the scallop roll art project, and people would ask me, why are they doing scallop shells? I'd be like, I have no idea.
Well,
The beach. We're near the beach.
and so the fun part to all this was that my daughter was running. She ran a graphic design company with Pam Smith. I don't know if you know who Pam is. Pam has Pam's daughter has a shop called Locally Yours.
Locally Yours. Yeah.
Yes.
I know Pam.
And so Pam's involved with that, and she was involved with the chamber. So since my daughter runs the restaurant and is so busy, she really didn't have time to work on my little book project because I had her busy doing this project.
Yeah.
So I said, "Is that right if I work with Pam to just design my book?" And she said, "Oh, sure, fine." So I had Pam. It took me about a year going back and forth with Pam to get this and the illustrations and put it together. And so at some point, Pam calls me up and says, "I'm going to a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, and they can't make up their mind from the lobsters. Do they want to do whales, dolphins, or they said scallop shells?" So she said, "Can I share your research?" I'm like, "Oh, of course." So she said, "I go to this meeting," and she says, and I share that, I've got stuff from Diane Finn, and one person goes, "I know Mrs. Finn. She was my teacher." And everybody goes, "I know Mrs. Finn. My mother worked with her." I'm like, "Oh gosh, I'm infamous in some ways. Good. It's not necessarily a good thing." Anyway, so because of this, that sort of was one of the things that
They got you involved in the scallop roll.
And so then I actually got to be in the book because. And I said, "Oh my gosh, here's one where I wasn't self-publishing. I was
That's cool.
I actually got to be a part of of the Chamber's book, which it was very exciting for me.
That's so cool.
Because
That's very cool.
all this starts to happen, and then the 400th, the COVID hits.
Oh
I
yeah,
know.
So I have
that derailed
3,000
so many things.
I have 3,000 of these in climate control storage.
Okay. Well,
This got launched, and then COVID hit. So, but it's okay. It's just
we'll take some pictures of these, and when we post the episode,
we'll put up a link.
we'll share links and
for sure.
great.
Yeah.
Well, then that's the question: is where can our listeners go if they don't feel like checking out our links? Where can they go to get your books?
Well, first of all, my books sell in some of the local shops, like
Okay.
the Cranberry House, Whimsical Wishes,
Yep.
Three Daughters, the Plantation gift shops. They all have my things. And then I started I figured I should have my own website.
Yeah, if you want to get rid of
4
those
books
things.
over there. Yeah.
The tinlanternpress.com. So a friend of mine came up with that idea. You should call yourself the Tin Lantern Press because of your punch tin lanterns. Everybody knew that from your tours. I'm like, oh, what a great idea.
Yeah.
And so I call myself the Tin Lantern Press.
Nice.
And so I've got more books to write. I'm working on, as I said, on the Naughty Pilgrims, which I hope to get before the end of this year.
Yeah.
And the next one after that is going to be the Acadian Exile in the Plymouth Connection. And my background's French Acadian.
Yeah.
And it's General Winslow from Plymouth and 2,000 Massachusetts soldiers that went up to Canada to drive the French out. So it's a very dramatic story. Most people do not know it.
I've heard of it.
I am 95% French Acadian, and so it completely connects with me and my family history. So my intention is to get this book done and be able to go up to the Congress, the big Acadian Congress, which comes every 5 years. So hopefully I'll still be well enough.
When
active enough.
When you're ready to put that book out, you'll have to come back on and tell us
For sure,
what the heck that is.
I actually for a while was substituting in a Catholic school. I was teaching middle school social studies, and so I actually put a PowerPoint together on this Acadian story.
Yeah.
And this was down in New Bedford. Well, it's actually a Acushnet near New Bedford. So I told the kids, of course, middle school kids, like, do you think they could care about this, right?
No.
I'm all passionate about it. They could care less. But what I said to them is, okay, I'm going to put this on, and I said, and you have to come up with 10 facts because each one's going to be worth 10 points, and it's going to be a grade. So, of course, they did listen. And when we went through the whole thing, I said, now, were any of you really interested in this story? Because it's very dramatic. It's got some really great stuff to it. And the kids who said that they had French background said they were interested.
Yeah, they were.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I said, oh, okay. So, this... So I know some people won't like it because it just certainly is disparaging to the English and a lot of people who are.
Yeah, but this is the thing. I'm like,
But it's history.
it's not.
It's
history. It's not.
It's whether you like it or not. That's more or less what happened.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. It is what happened, and what happened was that these families were dispersed throughout the colonies by the English because the English then got control of this Nova Scotia, that part of Canada, and while they were living peace and harmony for a while, at some point they said, you can't trust these French. If there are French and Indian wars going on, they've intermarried with these natives. So what we're going to have to do is going to have to get rid of them. And so they said, basically, you sign total allegiance to us. And these guys are saying, well, we don't mind. We'll do whatever you want, but we will not take arms against our French brothers, and we will not take arms against the natives. We've intermarried with them. We're friends with them. And so they said, too bad.
Wow.
Here are the boats. We're deporting you.
Oh, that's crazy.
Interesting. I think it's an interesting.
Oh,
Very
yeah. I find, obviously we all here like history.
We're all on the same page.
And for me, one more thing that just keeps, the connections, just like meeting, we're meeting you and meeting Alyssa, is that when I did this book in this version,
The Secrets of Plymouth Rock.
The Secrets of Plymouth Rock, I got a call, maybe this is now 3 or 4 years ago, from this gentleman who said, I knew your son, Tom, and he said, my name's Candido Brito, and he said, I have a degree, musical degree from Berkeley, and I've also taught in a charter school, and I would like to compose some songs to go with The Secrets of Plymouth Rock. Kind of like, what?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And Candido did 12 songs that completely come out of the book. Have you ever visited me in Plymouth, Massachusetts? The cutest little rock you've ever seen, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's one of his songs. Okay, so he did that. He composed these songs. He spent one winter, he composed the songs, and they're really varied and quite interesting. So he goes down to Florida in the winter and performs with a musical group. It's also tied in with Johnny Alves, Johnny, Johnny Drama and the Funky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he plays for Johnny, so he's got a connection with Johnny. But so he's down in Florida and he's talking about his music, and somebody says, you should get in touch with the music teacher that's at Federal Furnace School.
That's where I went.
Wow.
We'll have to double back on the
He
years.
goes up and he talks with him, and he shares the music with him, and the music teacher's very excited about it and shares the songs with other schools in Plymouth, and they get 4th and 5th graders to record these songs, and they go to Johnny Alves' studio here in Plymouth and actually professionally record the songs, and then Candido goes up to Boston because he's got friends from his Berkeley School of Music that do some background music, so it's very professionally done.
Wow.
And so there's music that goes with the book.
That's cool.
Go figure. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
so how all these things just keep unfolding in interesting ways.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's got like its own life. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to explain it. It's like I never would have imagined a CD coming from that.
I know.
But hey.
Yeah.
There's inspiration everywhere.
It's got it on Spotify.
Thanks.
Oh, cool.
Of
course it is.
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, and he's also working. He's got it on a flash drive also.
Cool.
Nice. So our listeners should go check out Tin Lantern Press. Did I get that right? TinLanternPress.com.
Yeah. Thank you. We got some cards.
Excellent. And thank you for coming on and talking to us.
I know,
this was really
was
great.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're obviously going to be a recurring guest because we have questions about other things.
For sure.
Sure. Yeah, I would love that.
Awesome. And I think this is the part where we stop talking. And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.